Good morning, my name's Andrew and I live here in Greece. Welcome to Greece. Now recently, many people have asked me, where would I consider recommending if you want to retire to Greece or buy a home in Greece or move to Greece? And I suppose ultimately therefore this video is a list of those places I would recommend and perhaps why I would recommend them as well, because that's just as important. But I'm starting here in Glyfada. Now I'm on a little road trip. I'm going to set most of this video in Kalamata, somewhere I'd highly recommend considering for retirement or buying a home. But Glyfada here is on the southeastern coast of the Peloponnese. We're only about 3.5 hours from Athens, about 2 hours from Kalamata, about an hour from Sparta, and should you not mind that slight remoteness, but you want Greek life, you want a beautiful, relatively vibrant Greek town, which is quieter in the winter but beautiful in the summer, then you'd do far worse than consider Glyfada. But that said, it's not my number one. Let's get on with my list, and hopefully there'll be something in here which is worth you investigating. Now, before I get into my list, there are 3 things I want to mention because they're all relevant to my choices, and they should be relevant to your choices. The first is that I live in Greece and I have a home in Greece, and that has created in my mind a criteria, I guess, which must be met in order for a region or an area or a town to be on my list in this video. And that criteria is very simple. 4 things. Firstly, accessibility. How easy is it for me to get home? That may sound daft, but let's say I'm flying in from seeing my mother in the UK. How close is it to the airport? Can I easily travel to my home at all times of year? Number 2, healthcare. I'm very healthy at the moment, hopefully, but there will come a time, perhaps in the future, when I need to seek healthcare and help and support, because I'm not planning to sell in the future. So how good are the hospitals around where I am? How easy is it for me to access top quality healthcare should I need it? Generally, that means going to Athens. Thirdly, all year round life. A lot of you will go to the islands and they'll be beautiful in the summer, and a lot of them will be absolutely dead in the winter. So for me, it's very important that places I recommend have all year round life. And finally, facilities or access to facilities. It doesn't mean you have to have shops and restaurants and bars right on your doorstep, but you might want to have a social life and you might want to go out. How easy is it for you to do so? Again, all year round. So that is my criteria, having lived in Greece. And then we come on to the reality of my living in Greece. I don't know the whole of Greece. I live in the Peloponnese. I know Athens, the Peloponnese, and a few of the islands pretty damn well. I recommend from those places because I can only recommend places that I've actually visited and I actually know and I can actually talk about. There are plenty of places in Greece that I'm certain are brilliant to buy homes in. Saloniki, Xanthi, Halkidiki. I don't know them. I can't recommend them. Don't exclude them. And finally, obviously, budget. Budget varies considerably across Greece, and what you can afford will, to an extent, dictate where you end up. Now, I will try and talk loosely with each area about the type of budget you might be looking at, but I'm not an estate agent. These are only broad ballpark figures, so don't call me out over it, please. That said, let's get into my list. So the first area I want to recommend, unsurprisingly, is Athens, the capital of Greece, and probably the best area should you want to tick all of my boxes: accessibility, healthcare, facilities, lifestyle. It has them all, but it comes with price. It is also the most expensive area in Greece, and prices do vary across Athens, but there are some areas I wouldn't live in personally, and some areas I would love to live in if I had the money to do so. So let's just quickly talk through a few areas. Firstly, the centre of Athens. Now personally, I would never live in the centre of Athens, but if you are determined to live in the centre of Athens, the place you want to go is Kolonaki. You go to Kolonaki Square, and around Kolonaki there's fantastic shopping around there, and it's quite upmarket. So you're going to be talking about maybe €1 million plus for a decent apartment. Don't be thinking about a house in the centre of Athens unless you're mega wealthy. But Kolonaki, if you have to be in the centre of Athens, is where I would recommend. Now let's say, okay, Andrew, we like Athens, but we want the beach as well. Well, you want to be along the Athens Riviera. So if you go about 5 kilometres to the south of the centre and drive along Poseidon Avenue, you come to various beaches along there, and I would recommend the area of Glyfada. Now Glyfada is very international, it's multicultural, there are many expats who live there, it's got a beautiful beach, it's got fair shopping, and again you've got the prices, I'm afraid. 2-3 bedroom apartment, €1 million, no problem. And that's just really starting. But Glyfada is somewhere you should definitely have a look at. There's another area along there which used to be the old airport, the Anatoliko Aerodromio, which shut in 2001 when they opened the current airport. And it's been the subject of much discussion for the last 20 years. It's a 600-hectare site that is now being developed into a fantastic residential and commercial area called Elliniko. It's the largest construction project, I believe, in Europe. And again, if you've got the money, you should consider looking for property there. They may not yet be built. And I have a video on buying property and the things to watch out for. One of them is if it's not built. But Elliniko is somewhere, if you have megabucks and you want somewhere for the future in Athens, I would consider looking. Look at some of the developments there. I believe it's going to have the tallest residential building in Europe. But okay, let's say you want Athens, you're not bothered about the beach. Where else would you go? Well, there are a couple of areas. Again, if you've got megabucks, look at Psychiko. Psychiko is where a lot of the embassies are. It's in the northern suburbs. And if you want a house or a villa, that's probably where you need to go. Again, as I said, megabucks, thinking 3-4 million euros perhaps for a villa. But it's not been developed in the way that the rest of Athens has. You haven't got lots and lots of apartment blocks. Yes, there are a few there. And yes, they're pricey. It's €1,000,000 plus again. But you have a lot of villas and houses there. So Psychiko is somewhere, if you have that sort of money and you must have a house, I would consider looking at. Then you go a little bit further north and you come to Kifissia and Kefalonia. Now this for me is where I would personally love to live. I think it's a perfect balance between Athens and the suburbs. You're not in the centre of Athens, but you're half an hour into the centre of Athens. You're still on the metro, you're still on the bus network, but you're elevated. You're about 230 metres up. It's a little bit cooler in the summer. It's more pleasant to live. You've got open areas with shops, restaurants, bars. You've got all the facilities you can want, but it's not somewhere that's popular with the tourists. This is where the Greeks go and the celebrities go and the politicians go. Again, you're talking 800,000-900,000 for a basic apartment there perhaps, but Kifissia and Kefalonia, well worth having a look at. Now let's say everywhere I've talked about in Athens is a little bit out of your price bracket, but you still want somewhere livable and decent, somewhere I would personally still recommend. I would look at somewhere like Chalandri. Now Chalandri sits actually between Psychiko and Kefalonia and Kifissia, and you just drop the price a bit. It's a lot more dense, it's a lot more commercial. There are a mix of offices and shops there. It's a really good area on a Saturday actually. You won't get tourists up there. It's a very good shopping centre, but it's where your average middle class Athenians can afford to live. It's not got the beauty and the quality of life that you might get in Kifissia or Kefalonia, but at the same time you can get yourself a decent 2 or 3 bed apartment for 250 to 300,000 euros. No problem. No problem at all. So have a look at Chalandri. Also have a look at an area called Marousi. There's a big shopping centre there called the Mall, which is the largest indoor shopping centre in the Balkans. And believe me, in the winter you might want indoor shopping. In the summer you might want indoor shopping when it's too hot outside. But you could also have a look at Marousi, which is again located close to Chalandri and has similar prices. So those would be my recommendations really for Athens. In the centre, Kolonaki. If you want the beach, go down to the Athens Riviera and Glyfada or maybe Elliniko, and then consider going up to the northern suburbs, Psychiko, Kefalonia, Kifissia, Chalandri and Marousi. Now my next area for recommendation is the coastal area around the county which Athens sits in, Attica. Athens sits in the county of Attica and it has a very nice coastline, all local to Athens. So if you choose to live around the coastline of Attica, you can easily access the facilities, the healthcare, etc. within Athens itself, no more than 40-50 minutes away in most cases. And I have a few areas to look at. There are many towns that you could look at and you need to get out, get a hire car, explore yourselves. But Porto Rafti, for example, very, very popular with the Athenians for their weekend homes, very upmarket. You're probably looking at 300,000 to 500,000 for an apartment there, 20 minutes only from the airport, but about 40-45 minutes into the centre of Athens without traffic. But you have loads of shops there. There's MacArthur Glen, for example, which is a big shopping centre about half an hour away. And Porto Rafti is a very good place to live. Now, along the coast, actually towards Athens, you have another area called Loutsa. Now, this is a lot cheaper than Porto Rafti. It's also known as Artemidi, but Loutsa is very popular because you can buy land there, you can build your own properties there. It's not expensive to do so. And many people will buy there to create their own house. It might take them 4 or 5 years, they'll have it built, but should you not want to do that, there are plenty already built there, and you're talking prices which are a lot lower, anything from perhaps 100, 150,000 euros up to about 300,000 euros. And then if you continue along the coast a little bit closer to Athens, you come to Rafina, a little bit more upmarket again, not quite Porto Rafti, but upmarket, Rafina and Matti, and only 15 minutes from MacArthur Glen shopping centre, about 35 minutes into the centre of Athens without traffic. There isn't a train line, I should say, to any of these places. You need a car, but very accessible for you. And prices there, 250, 300, 350, something like that. So Porto Rafti, Loutsa, Rafina and Matti, all worth considering. So we've covered Athens and the surrounding area, Attica. Now we're going to go west, about an hour west, over the Corinth Canal and down into an area called the Peloponnese, which is a fantastic area of history and mythology, and also amazing should you want to buy a house or an apartment or just retire somewhere with access to Athens and yet without the prices and the hustle and the bustle, if you want to get away from things. But having said let's get away from things, let's start with the 3 or 4 big towns there first. Patras, biggest city in the Peloponnese, 3rd biggest city in Greece, about 200,000 people, and very nice. I don't dislike Patras at all. I've done a couple of videos on it, but it is a big city, and personally I think there are better places to live. I'm not recommending it. I think if you're looking for somewhere to buy, if you're looking for somewhere to retire, you should go and look at Patras and the surrounding areas. But for me, there are better places in the Peloponnese, and that brings me on to where I am now, Kalamata. Now Kalamata, we're about maximum 2.5 hours drive from Athens and the airport. This is a city of 50,000 people. It has everything you want. It has the beach, it has the shops, it has 50,000 people, as I said, it has all year round life, and it has a fantastic vibe. And if it wasn't for Athens, I would recommend Kalamata to everyone. Kalamata for me is the place you come if you can't afford Athens, to be honest. It's so beautiful here, and prices up to 300,000 for an apartment, 300,000 here, a very nice apartment. If you want a villa, you can spend 700,000, you'll get a lovely villa, sea views, etc. You can of course spend more, but Kalamata for me is absolutely where it's at. Now if we then go north, we go an hour or so north, we come to the beautiful old town of Nafplio. Now Nafplio is somewhere that you should not discount either. It's about an hour and a half from Athens, 15,000 people, very, very touristy, hugely popular with tourists, but have a look at Nafplio. Similar prices actually to Kalamata, 250, 300, 350, something like that. Obviously smaller, but because of the tourist business, it's very rich. It has all year round business, loads of restaurants, loads of bars. What it doesn't have, which Kalamata has, is your normal commercial centre. H&M, Mango, Marks and Spencer's, Christovolos, all of these. It has unique boutique shops. Now you may prefer that, but they are aimed very much at the tourists. If you want to shop properly, locally, and you live in Nafplio, really you need to go to Argos, because you have shops in Argos 10-15 minutes down the road, not quite as many as you do in Kalamata, but Nafplio is definitely worth considering. And then let's pop back up north a little bit further, again to Corinth. Corinth itself, not so somewhere I'm a huge fan of, obviously very touristy. Corinth town, modern town, is quite industrial, but it is close to Athens, and there are some very nice little seaside towns around there, Loutraki for example, which would be fantastic to retire to. So anywhere around the Peloponnese with the big towns is worth considering. Okay, Andrew, so you've talked about the big towns in the Peloponnese. What else is there? I don't want to be in a big town. I don't want to be in Athens. I want to be by the seaside. Well, I started this video in Githia. Githia, beautiful beach town, southeast of the Peloponnese. I mean, it is a long way from Athens. Accessibility perhaps is a little bit of issue, but there are other places you can consider. Tolo, for example. Tolo is a nice, slightly overdeveloped, I have to say, beach town, about 15 minutes from Nafplio itself, so you're still within 2 hours of Athens. It's very popular in the summer with British package holidays, but don't think it's rowdy, it's not at all. Have a look at Tolo. The big challenge with Tolo, as my friends will tell you, is finding something that's been legally built. That may sound daft, but you need to consider it. And have a look at my video on buying property in Greece. Then you have Paralio Astros. Paralio Astros, around the coast from Nafplio, about 40 minutes from Nafplio, closer to Argos, beautiful little Greek resort. The problem with Paralio, Astros and Tolo and other beach resorts in the Peloponnese is they're incredibly lively in the summer. The place you want to be. It will remind you of the islands, but then they die late October and they won't open again until the spring. So you compromise, you have a challenge. Now that for me means that you don't have all year round life, you don't have all year round facilities, and access, yes, it's there to Athens, but it's a little bit limited. Other places you can consider, Koroni. If you go to the southwest of the Peloponnese, you come to Koroni, again about 3.5 hours from Athens, a long way, but boy do you feel like you're on holiday. Pylos, a little bit around the coast, beautiful, the Costa Navarone. If you like golf, if you have to play golf in Greece, you need to go to Pylos and the Costa Navarone. You'll be happy then all year round. You won't have anything else. Summer's great, but in the winter, all you'll do is play golf. Fine, go to Pylos, enjoy it. And if you prefer the northern coast, the Gulf of Corinth, maybe Castro, and anywhere, to be honest, along the coast from Corinth towards Patras. There are loads of little towns along there, but again, in the winter, they will be dead. So the moment you move out of these big towns, Athens, the areas surrounding Athens, and also places, as I said, like Kalamata and Nafplio, into these beach resorts, you've got to accept compromise. If you're happy to do that and you do that in full knowledge, I would highly recommend them. Now, this finally brings me to the islands, which I'm sure some of you have been waiting for. Remember my criteria though: accessibility, healthcare, facilities, and all year round life. Now, to be honest, that for me rules out any of the smaller islands. Islands with perhaps less than 30,000 people as a permanent population all year round, because they will shut. They will close after October. Now, some people will say, well, don't be daft, Andrew. I live in an island with 5,000 people. There's plenty going on. Fine. But for me, there's not enough. And this is my video. So I think you need an island with over 30,000 people. And there are 7 or 8 that meet that criteria. Let's start with Crete, the largest island in Greece, and 750,000 people. You get everything all year round. You have healthcare, you have facilities, you have restaurants. Yes, it will become a little bit quieter in the winter, but Crete is a large enough island for you to consider it for living in permanently. Absolutely, retirement, whatever you want to do. However, that said, all the islands have a bit of a premium, shall we say, associated with property, particularly if it is close to a beach or the coastline. Now, Crete, go inland, you'll get much better values on the property. So you can have a look around, but you could be paying anything from 50,000 up to 12 million. It just depends. And it's the same for all these islands. Move away from the coastline, you will get a better deal. Move close to the coastline, you're going to be paying top dollar. Absolutely. Now, the next island, I think, is number 2 island in Greece in terms of size, and you may never have heard of it. It's called Evia, and Evia is fantastic, probably my number 1 island actually, partly because you don't have lots and lots of foreign tourists there. It's very popular with Greeks for their second homes, and mainly because of its location. It is located just off the coast of Attica, on the other side from Athens, but it is connected by a permanent road bridge, and that means that you can arrive at the airport, you can jump in a car, and you can drive to Evia. You don't need to get a ferry, you don't need to get a plane. It's only an hour and a half. It depends where you are on Evia, of course. It's a big island, but it has 200,000 people. It has all year round life. It has better prices than most of the islands because it doesn't have the foreign tourists. And if you haven't ever heard of Evia or thought about Evia as a place that you might want to consider buying a home or retiring, I'd seriously have a look at it. Probably top of my list after Athens and Kalamata themselves. Then you have 3 islands which sort of have a similar range of populations. You have Lesbos, Rhodes and Corfu, all about 100 to 120,000 people on each, and they are all worth considering. Corfu itself, a little bit more northerly, typically has cooler seas and cooler weather in the winter, so you might just want to bear that in mind. Lesbos, long way from the mainland Greece, right over near Turkey. Again, accessibility could be a little bit of an issue, but all of them, including Rhodes, as I mentioned earlier, worth considering. And then finally, we have 2 little islands which have still sufficient populations, in my opinion, for them to be considered. Chios and Kefalonia. Chios is about 55,000, Kefalonia 30,000, 35,000 people on them. And they are both beautiful places to consider buying and living. They're both hugely popular, of course, and expensive. They will be quieter in the winter, but there's no reason why, if you want to live on an island, you shouldn't look at them. It's just, for me, the population is dwindling a little bit. The facilities are appropriate to the size of population, and I'm a city guy. I like bigger places. So for me, Evia, Crete, etc. is probably where I'd be looking if I had to be in the islands. So finally you say to me, okay Andrew, come on, stop hedging your bets, you've listed them all. What are your top three? Well, for me, Athens, I guess, it's the aspiration for me. I would love to be able to afford to be in Kefalonia or Kifissia in Athens. Great shopping, great climate, great lifestyle. Yes, you don't get the beach, but I've already got a home in Paralio, Astros. I'm not going to sell it. So for me, the beach is less important. Athens, number one, Kefalonia and Kifissia. Number two, Kalamata. If I couldn't afford to live in Athens long term, maybe I'd consider selling in Paralio Astros, using the money, moving down here to Kalamata, because you have a lot more. You have the beach, you have the town, you have the facilities, you have the shopping. It's a great place to live. And then number three, if I wanted the islands, I would consider Evia, because it's a little bit cheaper than a lot of the islands because you don't have the foreigners. It's still very large and it has that bridge connecting it to the mainland and giving you access, easy access to Athens and the airport. That should not be underestimated. So, I hope that's given you some ideas, some places to research, perhaps visit. This list, as I said, is not exhaustive. I can only recommend places I personally have visited and know, because how can I do that otherwise? You know, there are loads of other places in Greece that I do not know of, particularly up north, Saloniki, Halkidiki, Zante, etc. But I can't speak from knowledge, so I can't recommend them. As I said, I recommend all the places I've mentioned in this video. I hope you have luck finding your own place. It's great fun doing so, driving around, exploring Greece, and please watch some of my other videos because I have videos on many of these places and I look forward to doing more for you in the future. So thank you very much.